Chapter 335. Bang! Wu Ming casually sent a skeleton soldier that emerged from the shadows of the building flying. He continued to investigate the surrounding situation. So far, there are no ordinary people in the entire Winterwood City. Did they disappear into thin air? Or were they taken away? Although there were traces of blood and corpses, Wu Ming checked them and found that they were magicians, not ordinary people. Wu Ming stopped and did not continue to walk. Everywhere is full of the smell of the black root mud, as if it has been soaked in it. Wu Ming said in annoyance. No matter what, let's go home and Gil first. Wu Ming was worried about Gil. After all, the city was now empty, only some skeleton soldiers and ghosts. Maybe the other 6 servants besides Wu Ming also disappeared. Therefore, Winterwood City was full of contaminated magic. Wu Ming could not detect the changes in the magic of Winterwood City. That is to say, if there was a battle, Wu Ming could only hear it through his eyes and ears. Just like now. Wah! What the hell is going on here? A girl's cry for help came. There are still people alive? Wu Ming's eyes lit up. Let's go and see. With that, Wu Ming disappeared. On the other side, a white-haired girl was running angrily, and behind her was a group of skeleton soldiers. That's right, a group. This made Wu Ming, who came here, could not help but blink. Is this guy's lucky? That's right, although there were a lot of skeleton soldiers, Wu Ming basically encountered the scattered skeleton soldiers in the shadows of some tall buildings. Did the skeleton soldiers know how to hunt the weak together? Thinking like this, Wu Ming walked toward the girl, and his hands did not stop moving. The girl did not seem to notice the arrival of Wu Ming. She was an assassin, and continued to run. However, as often happens in melodramatic plots, the girl tripped. Damn it, don't underestimate me, I'm the master of animus. As if going crazy, the girl raised her hands. Of course, she was not surrendering, but she was going to use magic to attack. Gander! The white-haired girl raised one of her hands and extended her index finger. She then placed her other hand on the hand that had extended her index finger, and a magic array appeared in front of her index finger. A yellow magic bullet shot from the magic circle and hit a skeleton soldier, and the skeleton soldier disappeared in an instant. Is it a Nordic curse magic? Wu Ming said calmly. This kind of magic was originally a curse that could reduce people's physical ability. If it was serious, it could even kill people. But if there was enough magic power, it could also turn it into a magic bullet. This girl seemed to be a first-class magician. However, for the skeleton soldiers, it was not enough to make them feel the danger. The rest of the skeleton soldiers rushed toward the white-haired girl. Don't underestimate me. The girl continued to shoot Gander, but it could only kill a few skeleton soldiers. At this time, the girl found that there was a skeleton soldier on the electric pole behind her. The girl turned her head and looked at the demonic skeleton. Gander! The girl panicked and shot magic bullets at the skeleton soldier. But because of the panic, the magic bullets fired by the girl were a little off target, and the skeleton soldier dodged them easily. Facing the skeleton soldiers that fell from the sky, the girl was completely panicked. The girl held her head in fear, and closed her eyes in despair. Someone save me. Lev. Klala. Accompanied by the sound of something falling to the ground, the girl found that the expected attack did not come, and even the sound of the skeleton soldiers in front of her disappeared. The girl slowly opened her eyes and looked at the skeleton soldier behind her. She saw that the skeleton soldier that had just attacked the girl had been divided into 13 pieces like a work of art and scattered on the ground. Then the girl looked at the skeleton soldiers in front of her. All of them were still. A young man wearing a black trench coat, a black top hat, and his hands in his pockets slowly walked out of the skeleton soldiers. Klala! All the skeleton soldiers turned into pieces and scattered on the ground, making a sound. The young girl was startled, and her body shrank back. The young man took off his top hat and made a noble salute to the girl. Although I'm sorry, I'm not the Lev you want, but I can still save you, lady. The girl looked at the young man in front of her blankly and did not speak. On the other side, Cuculin and a rather naked man were fighting. The man wielded a spiral sword and attacked Cuculin, who was holding a magic staff, repeatedly. What's wrong, Cuculin? Can't you fight after becoming a caster? The man continued to attack Cuculin with a smile on his face. Damn it. Since you're mocking me, then take this, Fergus. Cuculin smiled bitterly, then pointed his staff at the man named Fergus. The Loon Rune appeared under the man's feet, and then there was a big explosion. Boom. Cuculin took advantage of the impact of the big explosion to open up the distance, and stood firmly in the distance. Whoosh! Fergus waved the spiral sword in his hand, and the smoke caused by the big explosion dissipated. Then he put the spiral sword on his shoulder. You're really worthy of being called a Loon Rune while fighting. You've become a caster. Your brain is also good. Fergus continued to smile and looked at Cuculin. Well, I'm also a caster. And, where did you come from? There are only 7 casters in the Holy Grail War, Fergus Mark Roy. Cuculin looked serious. Since Cuculin and the other 7 casters retreated, the next night, Cuculin's spirit body stayed in the Winterwood Hotel. Suddenly he could not sense his master. Cuculin quickly looked for his master, but there was no one in the Winterwood Hotel. Outside the hotel, Cuculin found that the whole Winterwood city had turned into a sea of fire, and he himself, even without his master, felt the lack of magic power. There was no doubt that the Great Holy Grail had provided him with magic power. Then Fergus came to the door. I don't remember there being 2 sabers in the Holy Grail War. Where's the Night King? Cuculin looked at Fergus seriously. Well, I'm not very clear here. I only know that my master used the Holy Grail to resummon 7 casters, and let us kill all the survivors in the city, including the servants. Fergus shrugged and said indifferently. However, it seems that there are not many living people in this city. I sense the aura of a servant, so I came here. I didn't expect it to be you, Cuculin. Cuculin was shocked by Fergus' words. Not to mention other things, his master had resummoned 7 casters, which meant that there were now 14 casters in Winterwood City. Chapter 336. That is to say, now it's a battle royale between 14 servants. No, it should be 7 servants versus 7 servants. Cuculin laughed maniacally. Well, you're not wrong to say that, but I think it's more like the 7 servants on my side are killing the rest of the servants. Fergus said arrogantly with a smile on his face. Since you're going to leave, I'll tell you, Cuculin. Fergus said, raising the spiral sword in his hand. Your saber belonged to us from the start, and your berserker was too noisy, so we surrounded him and killed him. But to be honest, he's quite capable. Fergus still had a smile on his face. Cuculin felt a sense of crisis in his heart, and he quickly began to draw the Loon Rune. If you can resurrect 11 times, I have nothing to say, but you will still be killed by us. The spiral sword began to emit a strange light. Cuculin, who was familiar with Fergus, knew that it was the precursor of Fergus's noble phantasm. Goodbye, my adopted son and friend, Cuculin. After that, Fergus waved the shining spiral sword in his hand. Caladbog. With the release of the noble phantasm, a rainbow-like brilliance covered Cuculin. Boom. The huge impact brought smoke and dust that covered the sky. So who's next? Fergus said, carrying the released spiral sword, and leaving the Winterwood Hotel. When the smoke and dust dissipated, several high-rise buildings, including the Winterwood Hotel, turned into ruins, as if witnessing the end of the hero Cuculin, and as if symbolizing the bravery of the hero Fergus, lying there quietly. On the other side, Wooming and the white-haired girl walked side by side on the burning abandoned road. The collapse of the Winterwood Hotel and the series of explosions naturally attracted the attention of Wooming and the white-haired girl. Wooming frowned and looked in that direction. Cuculin, is that you? What happened over there? Assassin, do you know something? The white-haired girl said rather angrily. Maybe it was a fight between servants. Who knows? Wooming shrugged and did not say anything. The white-haired girl resisted the urge to curse and touched the necklace around her neck. She didn't say anything and instead smiled happily. It's time to go, Olga. There's still a long way to go to our destination, Wooming said, walking ahead. Humph. I got it. Also, I'm your master. Can't you just listen to me for once? The girl named Olga didn't say anything in the end. She obediently followed Wooming and complained. Yes, a master who doesn't have the ability to master. You assassin. Wu Ming could not help but smile. After Wu Ming saved the girl, he generously admitted his identity as the masterless assassin. The girl also told him her name, Olga Marie Animusfia. It sounded like a noble name. Wu Ming vaguely remembered this surname when he went to the clock tower. In that case, let's work together. Then he made a suggestion. Wu Ming meant to let the girl named Olga Marie be his temporary master. Of course, this didn't mean that Wu Ming couldn't do without a master, because Wu Ming was directly summoned by the Great Holy Grail. No, it should be said that Wu Ming's main body was summoned by the Great Holy Grail. In fact, it was Wu Ming's main body that was summoned by the Great Holy Grail. Of course, on the other hand, Wu Ming was not interested in Olga Marie or anything like that. It was because Olga Marie's previous words made Wu Ming quite interested. Who can save me, Rafe? At that time Olga Marie did shout that. And Wu Ming had seen the owner of this name not long ago, well, and he was tricked. Wu Ming intuitively felt that Olga Marie and Rafe must be related, but Olga Marie didn't look like a big villain. Therefore, Wu Ming was very curious about where Rafe, Olga Marie, and the others came from. There was no doubt that Rafe was not from this world, and Olga Marie was full of puzzles. Wu Ming was a magician who explored the whole Winterwood City. At that time there was no Olga Marie, and no one entered Winterwood City these days. And the most important thing was that Olga Marie was dead. Yes, Wu Ming could perceive that Olga Marie was a ghost existence, similar to the existence of a servant. But it seemed that Olga Marie didn't know that she was dead, and still thought that she was a human, still alive. For various reasons, Wu Ming proposed to establish a contract with Olga Marie. I refuse. Of course, Olga Marie with a sad and angry face refused Wu Ming. Wu Ming certainly knew why Olga Marie refused. As before, Wu Ming and Olga Marie joked that there was no master talent. Olga Marie was a first-class magician, but he didn't know why Olga Marie didn't have a master talent, not even a little bit. First-class magicians didn't have a master talent, which was undoubtedly interesting. However, who was Wu Ming? For this kind of situation, Wu Ming prepared a tool very early. Wu Ming took out a necklace from the black ripples. This was a necklace that Wu Ming made according to the technology of the Euctomyrenia family. When Wu Ming threw the necklace to Olga Marie and explained the situation, Olga Marie was in a daze for a while, and then happily put on the necklace and established a magic channel with Wu Ming. The necklace had a technique that could connect the wearer and the contract servant. Although it only provided magic and there was no command curse, it could be regarded as half a master. This was the technology of the Euctomyrenia family to let the cyborgs provide magic to the servants. The cyborgs provided magic, the master managed the servants, gave orders, fought, and used command curses. It could be said that it didn't consume the master's magic at all. In order to establish a master-servant contract with Olga Marie, Wu Ming came up with a stupid way. Only in this way, Wu Ming and Olga Marie didn't completely trust each other. After all, Olga Marie was a magician, she should be cautious, which she did well. And Wu Ming simply wanted to follow Olga Marie. He wasn't in a hurry to know her information. Wu Ming had a hunch that as long as he followed Olga Marie, he would naturally know the information. Therefore, the two didn't exchange information. After that, Wu Ming proposed to go to his stronghold to see the situation. He still had an ally servant. Because she was unfamiliar with the place, so Olga Marie agreed to follow Wu Ming to his stronghold. As a result, because the small villa that Wu Ming bought was in the east, and Wu Ming and Olga Marie's location was in the west, the two of them didn't arrive for a long time. Olga Marie said, "I'm going to die." Then they encountered the collapse of the Winterwood Hotel. Wu Ming didn't want to stir up trouble. After all, his current assassin class, Jack the Ripper, wasn't strong in frontal combat. You probably haven't seen a Jack with a 100% critical strike rate. So he could only kidnap Twinkle and let her be his damage dealer. However, trouble always fell from the sky. Leia. Chapter 337. Leia. Accompanied by an inexplicable roar, a black creature with black smoke all over its body charged out of nowhere. The opponent was undoubtedly a servant. Wu Ming could feel it at such a close distance, and it seemed to be a berserker. What's going on? Isn't Berserker Hercules? Wu Ming frowned. Later, Wu Ming observed that Berserker seemed to rush out from the collapsed Winterwood Hotel, which meant that the opponent was previously under the hotel. The opponent's whole body was black, and he could tell that it was an African. Wu Ming thought so. However, it was lucky. Leia. The black mass roared and rushed toward Wu Ming. That's right, it rushed toward Wu Ming, ignoring Olga Marie. Wu Ming could feel that the opponent was targeting him. Olga, hide, it's a servant. Wu Ming said seriously to Olga Marie behind him. Olga Marie quickly found a ruin to hide. Berserker picked up a telephone pole from the side of the road, jumped up and slammed it toward Wu Ming. Boom. The ground was directly smashed, and large pieces of stone flew up. Ooh. Olga Marie covered her head and hid behind the ruins, whimpering. Really, what the hell did you do, assassin? Wu Ming fell behind Berserker, so the attack naturally didn't hit Wu Ming. It's not my fault, this guy came to me. Wu Ming shrugged. Leia. Berserker roared and once again raised the blackened telephone pole, and smashed it toward Wu Ming. Boom. The ground was smashed again. This guy's agility is at least A rank. Wu Ming frowned. Wu Ming almost couldn't dodge the attack. But I'm an assassin. If you expect an assassin to fight a berserker, perhaps only the ancestor of the assassin, the legendary first Hassan, could do that. If that's the case. Wu Ming narrowed his eyes. Leia. Berserker madly rushed toward Wu Ming. With Berserker's current speed, Wu Ming was in danger. The dark mist city. Along with Wu Ming's noble phantasm, countless smoke exploded and engulfed Berserker, forcing Berserker was forced to stop. The smoke enveloped an area of 100 meters with Wu Ming as the center. Then the smoke disappeared, revealing Wu Ming's figure and Berserker's disappearance. Olga Marie put out her head when there was no more noise. Did you kill that Berserker? Olga Marie was in disbelief. The smoke also covered her, so Olga Marie couldn't see anything and couldn't hear anything clearly, so she didn't know what happened. Of course not, I just trapped that Berserker in an enchantment. Let's go, he'll come out soon. That's right, Jack the Ripper's enchantment. The mist. It was the spirit storm that recreated London in the 19th century. It was also the reason why Jack the Ripper could spread fog and use fog. Enchantment. Enchantment. Olga Marie was obviously shocked. After all, for a magician, an enchantment was the highest level of magic. Don't be so surprised. My enchantment is cursed. It's not a good thing. Wu Ming shook his head, then took the lead and began to move toward the stronghold. After that, Olga Marie didn't ask any more questions. After all, Olga Marie was just a fake master who provided magic, so she couldn't see the attributes of the servant. Well, my situation is a bit complicated. I can't explain it in a short time. You can call me Jack or Assassin after all, we're just partners. Wu Ming said at that time. Jack. Assassin. Olga Marie thought carefully. Hey. If you don't follow me, I'm leaving. Wait a minute. After walking for a while, Olga Marie really couldn't walk anymore. So Wu Ming took Olga Marie to a store to settle down. Although most of the buildings were destroyed and burned, there were still some buildings that weren't completely destroyed. Like this small store, there were some edible food in it. Here. Wu Ming said, throwing a bread to Olga Marie. This is. Olga Marie looked at the old goods, slightly nostalgic. It's still in the packaging, it's still edible. Wu Ming continued to organize the edible food, one by one, putting it into the black ripple. Olga Marie ate in small bites, looking at Wu Ming's black ripple. Is this an independent space? Olga Marie asked. Yes, because I cheated a little. I let the assassin rank have the noble phantoms of other ranks. Wu Ming smiled a little awkwardly. Wait, you can cheat. Olga Marie heard that for the first time, she couldn't stay calm. Didn't I say after all I'm special? Wu Ming just said to Olga Marie's surprise. Then, after organizing the edible food, Wu Ming walked to the door. I'll go out and check the situation. You stay here and don't run around. Wu Ming said. What? You make it sound like I like to run around. Olga Marie retorted Wu Ming, but Wu Ming just pretended not to hear. I also need to clear my mind, you should go. Olga Marie said in disgust. Wu Ming shrugged and didn't say anything. Wu Ming released his mana. propelling himself to fly up and directly arrived at the roof of a tall building. From the height of this building, he could almost overlook the entire Winterwood City. Standing on the roof, Wuming looked at Winterwood City. He could vaguely see that there were battles in Winterwood City, and there were more than one. There weren't many battles that could cause large-scale explosions, and Wuming could vaguely sense a small battle. But it's a bit too much. Wuming said in detail. What Wuming was referring to was naturally the battles in those few places. Assuming that in addition to Silent Noise and Berserker just now, there were still 7 servants, and those large-scale and small-scale battles just now were more than 3 places. It's impossible that there were a few servants who had nothing to do and attacked by themselves. Combined with the extra Berserker, plus Lev's trick on the Holy Grail before Wuming was sent flying, Wuming almost guessed it. The number of servants increased? Is it to chase me or something else? Wuming thought. At this time, Wuming sensed that several servants were coming this way. If these servants didn't change their direction, there was no doubt that they would encounter Olga Marie. The perception of servants was much stronger than humans, and Olga Marie couldn't hide under the eyes of servants. But the servants coming this way just proved Wuming's conjecture. The number of servants increased. Swish! Wuming instantly disappeared from the roof. Chapter 338. On the abandoned and burning street, 2 figures were running. One of the figures was wearing a rather revealing purple tights, and some parts of the body were covered with armor. One of the figures was holding a 2-meter-high shield with a cross on the outside, and the other hand was holding a girl. Needless to say, she was a servant. The girl had short, orange-red hair that was tied into a single ponytail. She wore a simple white top with black straps around her chest and abdomen. There was a black belt around her waist. She wore a short black skirt, black stockings, and white boots. Although it looked like work clothes from somewhere, it looked extremely beautiful on the girl. The girl with short orange hair had 3 red marks on the back of her right hand, which formed a shield. Obviously, she was the master of the girl in purple tights. Next to the 2, a girl in a cloak was carrying a scythe and holding a little girl with black hair in her arms. If Wuming was here, he would know that she was one of the 7 servants on the beach. She used a scythe as a weapon, Lancer of the Tong family. Needless to say, the little girl with short black hair in her arms was the master of Lancer. The 3 petal-like marks on the back of her right hand were the best proof. Matthew, are you okay? The girl with short orange hair asked with concern. She seemed to feel guilty for letting the younger generation carry her. It's okay, senpai. I am senpai's servant, and senpai is my master. The girl named Matthew said and smiled at her master. They're coming. Lancer, who was beside the 2 of them, finished speaking. Suddenly, a sharp arrow was shot towards them. Mashu quickly stopped and raised her shield to block the sharp heart-shaped arrows. Bang, 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 bang. A few steel-like collision sounds came, and Matthew, who was holding the shield, was pushed back a few steps by the huge impact. Are you okay, Matthew? The orange-haired girl asked worriedly, her words vaguely hinting that she was blaming herself for not being able to help. It's okay, senpai. Please be careful. The opponent is a very powerful servant. Although it was very difficult to resist the attack, Mashu still smiled and said to her master who was protecting her, Matthew is right. Chaldea's instrument shows that there are 2 servants comparable to gods. No, there is no doubt that they are gods near you. Be careful, Matthew, Tachika. A male voice came from a device on the wrist of the girl with short orange hair, who seemed to be called Rika. Although the voice sounded rather unreliable, cough cough, there was no doubt that he was right. Then Matthew said to Lancer, Ms. Anna, please help us. I don't want senpai to leave this place. Matthew and Tachika had seen Anna's ability. For many skeleton soldiers, Anna just waved her sickle and killed all the skeleton soldiers. She was much more powerful than Matthew. The girl in front covered her mouth and laughed. So what should we do now, sister? Will you die with your companions, or rise up and resist us? The 2 girls finished each other's words as if they were the same person. Sister. Perhaps. I was summoned to this era to kill you again. Anna put Sakura Madu down, and Sakura Madu ran into Tachika's arms obediently. Then, Anna picked up the scythe from behind and stood back to back with Matthew, protecting their master behind them. Seeing the scythe pointed at her, the girl in the back smiled happily and painfully. My poor sister, she has to experience the pain of killing her family again. The girl in front was also the same. The two were happy that Anna didn't have to die, but they were sad that their sister had to bear the pain of killing her family. Since that's the case, I'll end all of you. Suddenly, a ghostly voice came out of nowhere. Mother of disintegration. Chapter 339. Maria Ripper. After the activation of the relic's true name, a thick fog engulfed everyone. The thick fog reduced everyone's visibility to less than 5 meters. Even Anna's two sisters could barely see each other. The girl behind Gadotsi, and the rest sensed the danger as they were of the same rank. She quickly warned her sisters. Uriali, be careful. However, the girl named Uriali in front of Gadotsi, and the rest was a little dazed as she let out a doubtful voice. A silhouette appeared behind her. It was a black leather windbreaker, a black top hat and black leather shoes. Everything was black except for the 2 red glows where his eyes were. It was extremely horrifying. What a pity, Gorgon's goddess. You're really unlucky, said the black silhouette. After all, I exist for women. The black silhouette revealed his face. It was Wuming. After Wuming finished speaking, Uriali's vision turned black and she fell. Sister. Anna shouted in worry. She raised her scythe and looked at Wuming with hostility. Wuming hugged the girl who fell and looked at everyone with a smile. Ignoring Anna, who was looking at him with hostility, Wuming looked at the goddess behind Gadotsi and the rest. Then there's only you, goddess Stheno. Stheno. Matthew said in surprise. He was obviously shocked by the name. Stheno frowned and immediately turned around to leave. Although she was a goddess, Stheno knew that she did not have much combat power. The reason why the 2 servants, Anna and Matthew, were forced to flee with their masters was that Matthew was too weak, and Anna did not want to fight with her 2 sisters, which led to the scene where the 4 of them were besieged by Stheno and Uriali. Moreover, when Anna picked up her scythe and was ready to fight, Stheno and Uriali were sad that their sister was going to kill her sister again. The 2 of them knew that if their younger sister were to fight, the 2 of them would not be a match at all. Moreover, in mythology, Stheno and Uriali were defined as goddesses who had no combat power at all. If they did not appear in the world as servants, Stheno and her sister Uriali would not have any combat power at all. Seeing that Stheno had escaped, Wuming did not rush to chase after her. Instead, he threw Uriali in his arms to Anna. Although Anna was somewhat hostile to Wuming, she would still choose to catch her sister's corpse, even if it was a conspiracy. Let's leave for a while, said Wuming, turning into smoke and disappearing in front of everyone. Anna, who was holding her sister's corpse, Gadotsi, Matthew, and Sakura Madu were left in a daze. Wuming chased after Stheno at a leisurely pace. It was not because he was arrogant, but because Stheno was now in Wuming's enchantment. That's right. The moment Wuming activated his noble phantasm, he also activated his enchantment, the mist. If Gadotsi and the others were paying attention, they would realize that the environment around them had changed. Besides, the device on Gadotsi's wrist no longer emitted any sound because the mist released by Wuming interfered with the mana connection. Moreover, Wuming had the ability to turn into mist in his enchantment and appear anywhere in an instant. So Wuming was not in a hurry to catch up with Stheno. Sensing the existence of the otherness in his enchantment, Wuming frowned. He hasn't come out yet. However, after sensing the distance between the 2 of them, Wuming did not bother about him anymore. Instead, he sensed Stheno's location. By the way, even if Stheno was an assassin and also had a level A+ aura concealment, he could not get rid of Wuming. The entire enchantment was filled with mist. As long as there was mist, Wuming could detect it. Therefore, Wuming had already discovered Stheno, who was hiding in the shadows of the alley ahead. After stopping, Wuming walked to the entrance of the alley slowly and looked at the shadows. Do you want to play hide and seek, great goddess? Wuming smiled as he walked into the alley. When he got close to Stheno, a charming voice was suddenly heard. Smile of the goddess. Following the activation of the noble phantasm, Wuming stood there motionlessly as if he was frozen. Then Stheno's figure appeared. I thought you were a powerful hero, but I didn't expect you to be the same as the others. A man is a man indeed, Stheno said slowly as if he had already won. Walking to Wuming, who was standing there in a daze, Stheno raised his head and looked at Wuming. What beautiful eyes, what a handsome face. What a pity, Stheno said as if she was intoxicated. None of the men who had been affected by her charm could survive. To be able to attack us sisters, I thought you were really a man who wasn't tempted by beauty. Stheno smiled, then raised his hand and caressed Wuming's cheek. Suddenly, when Stheno touched Wuming's face, he seemed to have seen something rather shocking. Shock was written all over his face. Slap. Suddenly, a hand grabbed Stheno's arm. Then a rather frivolous voice was heard. It's not good to casually invade other people's privacy, great goddess. What? Stheno exclaimed in surprise. Looking at the man who grabbed his wrist without any trace of being affected by the charm, Stheno smiled bitterly. I see. Was that all a disguise? What a cunning man. Wuming only maintained his smile and didn't explain anything. As for the appearance of being affected by the charm just now, that was an act by Wuming. As someone who had seen through Stheno and Euryale's true names, Wuming naturally wouldn't be so rash as to underestimate Stheno. Even if Wuming could take down Euryale without any difficulty, Wuming wouldn't think that Stheno was easy to deal with. After all, no matter how weak and useless the other party was, she was still a goddess. Chapter 340. Wuming grabbed Stheno's hand, and a silver chain wrapped around it. Wuming had plenty of pirated Enkidu in his dimension artifact. Cough cough, anyway, Stheno couldn't run away. Moreover, after Stheno saw what happened to Wuming, he gave up on the idea of running away. Don't worry, sly man. I have no intention of running away, even if you did something terrible to my sister. With a smile on his face, Stheno calmly said something rather strange. Although I know you're saying that I didn't kill you, Euryale, please don't be so strange. Forget it. Wuming shrugged nonchalantly and let go of Stheno's hand. However, the Enkidu that was connected to Stheno's hand because of Wuming didn't unlock when Wuming let go of Stheno's hand. What? You still don't trust me? Stheno raised the Enkidu on his arm and said unhappily. I'm a goddess. A goddess won't lie to a hero who has captured her. Stheno narrowed his eyes and smiled at Wuming as if he was looking at a delightful toy. Forget about being a hero. I'm not interested in being a hero. I'm just an assassin, at least for now. Wuming shrugged. Wuming's last sentence was to tell Stheno not to expose his identity. He just wanted to be a different kind of assassin. Oh, since the great hero says so, I'll just listen to you. Stheno smiled at Wuming. Let's go. Your Euryale should be awake by now, right? Wuming grabbed Stheno's hand and started walking towards where they came from. As expected of a brave warrior, you actually dared to hold the hand of a goddess. However, since you didn't do anything to Euryale, I will forgive your rudeness. Stheno raised his neck like a proud princess. I feel like it's better to get rid of you now. On the way, Wuming began to ask Stheno for information, or to verify his speculation. After Wuming told Stheno about his speculation that Lev had resummoned 7 servants, Stheno nodded. As expected of you. That's right. The man in the green hat summoned 7 new servants, including me and Euryale. Stheno walked elegantly as if Wuming didn't take the initiative to hold her hand, but she took the initiative to hold Stheno's hand. Then he began to introduce their lineup. I'm an assassin, Euryale is an archer, and Saber is a muscleman. I can tell he's a lecherous guy. His eyes lit up when he saw Euryale and me, and he even tried to flirt with us. Stheno frowned. He was rather displeased. Stheno knew how to talk up trites up knew how to flirt with. Castor looks like a mature old man. He doesn't talk much. Ryder is a red-haired muscular man. He seems to be a king, and he has some connection with Zeus. He's quite annoying. And the way Castor looks at Ryder is a bit weird. He's full of passion. Stheno smiled mischievously. Wu-ming ignored her and continued to listen to Steno's introduction. Steno looked at Wu-ming, who didn't respond. He was not surprised and continued to talk. Berserker was a guy covered in black. I couldn't see his face clearly. However, this guy was always by the other Saber's side. You don't know how excited Berserker was at that time. It looked like he wanted to kill Saber. Wu-ming thought that the Berserker mentioned by Steno should be the black Berserker they met before, and the other Saber mentioned by Steno should be Artoria. Combined with what Steno said, Wu-ming now knew why Berserker came straight to him. I'm afraid that Berserker is a Knight of the Round Table, Wu-ming thought. Although Wu-ming didn't think that a Knight of the Round Table could become a Berserker, there were exceptions to everything. Like Mordred, with her obsession with Artoria, she was likely to become a Berserker. In the last Holy Grail War, although Mordred appeared as a Saber, her fighting style was as violent as a Berserker. But the Berserker who attacked Wu-ming didn't think it was Mordred. Why was Wu-ming so sure? It felt wrong. Well, that's right, the Berserker didn't give Wu-ming the same feeling as Mordred at all. Wu-ming was very confident in his intuition, and didn't accept any rebuttal. Ahem. After all, even if Mordred became a Berserker, she wouldn't have an obsession with Wu-ming. If it was really Mordred, then Artoria would be very busy right now, and the Berserker wouldn't attack Wu-ming at all. What about Lancer? Wu-ming shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He asked Steno. This is also why I put Lancer at the end. Steno's eyes began to look serious. You must be careful. Lancer is a god. If you really want to call him a demigod, he should have the ability to attack gods. He gave me a very dangerous feeling. Steno recalled the golden figure he had seen before. It shone like the sun. The other party had a special attack against gods, and with the light of the sun, it was too bad for Steno, who was a snake. Like the sun, wearing golden armor, holding a long spear. Wu-ming felt that this person was more familiar the more he thought about it. I hope it's not him. Wu-ming said softly. If it was really him, Gilgamesh might be in danger. What are you mumbling about? Steno rolled her eyes at Wu-ming. Nothing. Wu-ming said casually. Steno saw that Wu-ming was perfunctory and didn't ask anymore. After a few minutes, Wu-ming began to complain. I was wondering why you ran so far. Wu-ming looked at Steno with disdain. They had been walking for a while, and they still hadn't reached where Matthew and the others were. After all, London wasn't small. Ahahaha. Wu-ming could transform into smoke and move quickly, but Steno couldn't. If it weren't for you chasing me, I wouldn't have run so far. Steno looked at Wu-ming with disdain. So it's my fault. Wu-ming was helpless. Then unlock this for me, so I can keep up with your speed. Steno raised her hand, and the silver chain on it glowed faintly. This was the symbol of the Enkidu, which was sealing Steno's power. I have other reasons for not unlocking it for you. At this time, Wu-ming was about to explain, but his expression suddenly changed. That guy went over. That guy? Is there anything else in your enchantment? Steno looked at Wu-ming in confusion. However, the moment Steno finished asking, Wu-ming didn't answer. He picked Steno up and started sprinting. Wah! What are you doing? You gave me a fright. There's no time to explain, we'll talk later. Just like that, Wu-ming carried Steno in a princess carry and sprinted in the direction of Gadatsi and the others. Chapter 341. When Wu-ming went after Steno, there were only 4 people left: Gadatsi, Matthew, Anna, and the unconscious Uriali. Gadatsi looked at the direction where Wu-ming went. Then she looked at Matthew. Matthew, is that man also a servant? He's so powerful. Gadatsi was a little excited, and her eyes were shining. Yes, senpai, the man who went after the enemy is a servant, but strangely, I haven't found his aura. His rank may be assassin. After Matthew explained to Gadatsi about Wu-ming, he wanted to contact their support personnel, but, Doctor? Are you there? No matter how Matthew called the device on Gadatsi's hand, no one responded. What's going on? Just when Matthew was puzzled, Gadatsi's panicked voice came. Matthew, look, the environment around us has changed. Hearing Gadatsi's surprised and slightly panicked voice, Matthew also looked around. The surrounding buildings had become European-style buildings, which were completely different from the modern buildings in Winterwood City. Similarly, there was no one around, and there was no trace of life. Because of the fog brought by Wuming, Matthew and Gadatsi didn't notice the change in the surrounding environment at first. If it weren't for Gadatsi's curiosity about the fog, it would have taken Matthew a while to notice the change in the surrounding environment. Matthew walked to a nearby corner and touched the wall. "Senpai, this should be a 19th century building." Matthew turned around and looked at Gadatsi. "Hey Matthew, do you know this place?" Gadatsi was a little surprised. "Yes, I've seen it before." Matthew smiled and nodded. Matthew is really knowledgeable. Gadatsi praised Matthew, which made Matthew blush a little. "This fog contains extremely powerful toxins. Ordinary people may die if they stay here for a long time." At this time, Anna suddenly said. Gadatsi and Matthew looked at Anna, who had been holding her sister before. At this time, Anna had already hugged Sakura Madu in her arms and protected Sakura Madu with her cloak. "What? Senpai, how do you feel now?" Matthew looked at Gadatsi with a little panic. "Although it's not that I don't trust Anna, I really don't feel uncomfortable." Gadatsi touched her body and shook her head. "Really, Senpai?" Matthew still didn't believe it and looked at Gadatsi with concern. Really, Matthew, don't be so nervous." Gadatsi smiled and waved her hand to signal Matthew to calm down. "That, Anna sis, actually, I don't feel any discomfort. It's better to say that the air in the fog is very fresh." At this time, Sakura Madu, who was protected in Anna's arms, also spoke. Anna was silent at this time, thinking. Previously, Anna was silent for a while because of her sister's corpse, and didn't take care of Sakura Madu, but when she found that her sister was not dead, she felt relieved. At the same time, Anna also discovered the toxins contained in the fog. After that, she quickly protected Sakura Madu. In other words, Sakura Madu was not protected by Anna for a short period of time. Anna and Matthew could stay in the fog for a long time without being hurt, but their masters were also fine. Gadatsi was not affected at all, and Sakura Madu said that the air was very fresh. "It's better to be cautious. After all, this is likely to be Assassin's enchantment." Anna was silent for a moment, but she still didn't release Sakura Madu from her cloak. However, after Anna said the word enchantment, Matthew was shocked. Enchantment. After all, Matthew already knew that Anna was also a goddess, so Matthew felt that Anna's words were very credible. Looking at the somewhat surprised Matthew, Gadatsi, who didn't know what an enchantment was puzzled. "Matthew, what is that?" "Enchantment?" Gadatsi asked. "Senpai, enchantment is a magic that can instantiate one's own scenery. You can think of it as an independent small world." Matthew knew that his master was not a magician, so he explained it in the simplest terms. "Independent small world. Is it that powerful?" Gadatsi was also surprised. "Well, it's called enchantment. It's called the magic closest to magic. It can be said to be the highest level magic." Matthew nodded. The highest level magic. For Gadatsi, she didn't understand the meaning of magic, but the term highest level magic was very useful for Gadatsi. After all, it was the highest level magic. And among magicians, magicians with enchantment are quite rare. It seems that Assassin is not an ordinary person. Matthew looked at the direction where Wuming left. The servant over there is right. She is indeed not an ordinary person. A seductive voice sounded. And it was a voice that everyone was familiar with. "What's that sound?" Gadatsi looked in the direction of Urieli, who was unconscious. As expected, the unconscious Urieli had woken up. She was sitting on the ground in an elegant posture, looking like a young lady. "Huh, didn't you say that you were killed by Assassin just now? How did you come back to life?" Gadatsi's face was filled with a zombie expression. After all, Gadatsi always thought that Urieli was killed by Wuming. "How rude of me, unknown master. Let's not talk about how I'm a goddess. How could I die so easily? Moreover, that guy isn't a cruel person. Why would he kill me?" Urieli looked at Gadatsi with disgust, which made Gadatsi feel a little embarrassed. Are you awake, sister? Anna knew that her sister was not dead, so she was not surprised to see O'Reilly wake up. I'm so sad, my dear sister. Can't you be more gentle with your sister? O'Reilly said uninterestedly. Anna didn't say anything. She didn't even look at O'Reilly. You won't be our enemy anymore, right? Matthew said uncertainly. Yes, of course. I've been defeated by that man, and I'm his prisoner now. I won't attack you anymore. O'Reilly didn't feel like a prisoner at all. She looked at Gadotsi and Matthew playfully. Besides, although Master asked us to kill all living creatures, Stheno and I have no intention of attacking you. We're only chasing you because our sister is here. Sigh. Matthew and Gadotsi were dumbfounded. Hearing this, Gadotsi and Mashu remembered that it was Anna who passed by them at the beginning, and then the two of them began to chase after them. Because of that, Matthew had no choice but to propose a collaboration with Anna. I'm sorry. Anna's expression couldn't be seen, but Matthew and Gadotsi felt that Anna's face was extremely red. Let's not talk about that first. A servant is coming, O'Reilly said calmly. La-ia dash. Chapter 342. A roar that didn't sound like a human's roar could be heard from the front of Gadotsi and the others. This made Gadotsi, who had just escaped from danger, feel very uneasy. Matthew, who could see his master's uneasiness, raised his shield and stood in front of Gadotsi. It's okay, senpai. I am senpai's servant. I will protect senpai. Looking at Matthew's smiling face, Gadotsi's fear was swept away. Thank you, Matthew. Gadotsi smiled at Matthew. It's coming. O'Reilly reminded. At the same time, a hostile servant appeared in front of Matthew and the others. Because of the interference of the fog, Matthew, who had just become a servant, no, a dime servant, was obviously not like O'Reilly and Anna. His perception of danger was also a level lower. Anna had already let go of Sakura Madu and raised her scythe at the source of the danger. Sakura Madu also ran to Gadotsi's side and was hugged by Gadotsi. After all, Sakura Madu was still a little girl, and she was very likable. Gadotsi naturally would not reject Sakura Madu, so she picked her up. Laea. As the roar approached, the owner of the roar appeared in front of Gadotsi and the others. The black fog and the full body armor made it impossible to see the person's face, but they knew that this was a berserker. It's our berserker. O'Reilly knew that the berserker would not distinguish between friend and foe, but she still said calmly, although Matthew was very confused about what O'Reilly meant by our side. Now was not the time to ask questions. Sister, can you fight with us? Anna looked at O'Reilly, who was sitting on the ground in an elegant posture. Of course, Mashu and Gadotsi also agreed to the idea of increasing their combat power. No. O'Reilly said straightforwardly. Looking at Matthew and Gadotsi, who immediately showed regret, O'Reilly continued. It's not that I don't want to help you, but that man is afraid that I won't be honest, so he has already set a restraint on me. With that said, O'Reilly raised her hand with a bracelet. Above this pair of beautiful and charming jade hands, several silver-white chains with golden light were wrapped around it. Chains, Gadotsi said, looking at the silver-white chains in confusion. She didn't notice it before. Matthew was also puzzled. Obviously, neither of them noticed it. Perhaps only Anna, who caught O'Reilly before, noticed it. The extraordinarily beautiful chains and the beautiful girl accompanied by her smile made her even more beautiful and seductive. It didn't feel out of place at all, which was why Matthew and Gadotsi didn't notice it. This chain has the ability to restrain the mana and divine power in my body. Also, I was injured by that man's noble artifact earlier, so I don't even have the strength to stand up now. This was also the reason why Yuri and Ellie had been sitting there without standing up. Besides, you can't defeat him alone. Hurry up and run for your lives. After all, O'Reilly and the Black Berserker were considered to be on the same side, and he wasn't weak at all. When Anna decided to kill O'Reilly and Stheno, the two of them felt that Anna would definitely be able to do it. That was because that was how myths and legends worked. This was how heroic spirit legends worked. The evil dragon was destined to be unable to defeat the dragon slayer, And the pure girl couldn't resist her younger sister who killed and devoured her in order to protect her. That was the tragedy and law of the followers. Therefore, judging from the strength of Anna and Matthew, it was unlikely that they would be able to defeat this berserker. I won't leave. I won't abandon my sister and leave. I'll protect my sister this time. It was ironic that the pursuer no longer chased after them. The rebels who had made up their minds to kill the pursuer changed their mind and chose to protect the pursuer instead. Fate is often so asterisk 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 asterisk. Get used to it. Us too. Although you've been chasing after us, it was a misunderstanding. Since you're Ms. Anna's sister, we won't abandon you. Gudatsi clenched her fists and looked at Matthew. That's right. I agree with you, Senior. Matthew nodded. It had to be said that Matthew, who had just become a subservient, and Gudatsi, who had just entered the world of magicians, had a very high sense of justice. However, Riley was helpless against Anna, Matthew, and Gudatsi's opinions. You guys are really... Riley shook her head helplessly. Then, before Riley finished her sentence, Anna dashed toward Berserker. Laea. Berserker bellowed at the sight of his enemy, charging toward him. He raised the blackened electric pole in his hand and charged toward Anna. Got to say, Riley was indeed a goddess. Her analysis was spot on. Anna was indeed no match for Berserker. Bam. In just a single exchange, Anna was sent flying by Berserker. Mashu. Gudatsi saw that his ally was sent flying, so he quickly shouted at Mashu. Yes. Senior. Although the two hadn't known each other for a long time, Matthew and Gudatsi fell in love at first sight. Ahem, they cooperated very well. Matthew naturally understood what Gudatsi meant. In an instant, Matthew dashed toward Berserker with his shield. Berserker didn't know why, but after seeing Mashu, he was stunned and stood there in a daze. Bam. Boom. Berserker was accidentally knocked away by Matthew and fell to the ground with a loud thud. That's right, accidentally. Matthew, Gudatsi, Riley, and Anna, who was sent flying by Berserker, were also stunned. It couldn't be helped. Such a powerful enemy was sent flying by Matthew's shield bash. Anna wondered how she had been sent flying just now. Matthew, you're so powerful. Gudatsi exclaimed. When they first came to this world, Gudatsi and Matthew only encountered skeletons and the like. However, because Matthew was a servant, it was easy for him to deal with skeletons. Therefore, Gudatsi felt that Matthew was very powerful at that time. Later, when Gudatsi praised Matthew, Matthew said that those skeletons were just weak soldiers. He was actually very weak, but he encountered a weaker opponent. This made Gudatsi feel a little helpless. Although it didn't mean that she hated Matthew, Gudatsi was still a little depressed when she learned the truth. However, there was one sentence that Gudatsi remembered very clearly and was very touched. I am Senior's servant, and I will always protect Senior. Matthew's sentence moved Gudatsi quite a bit. Then the two fell in love at first sight. Ahem. Their relationship became more harmonious. But now, after seeing Matthew send Berserker, who was very powerful, Anna flying, Gudatsi wondered if Matthew said that he was weak to make her feel less proud. Then, while everyone was still in a daze, Berserker, who was sent flying, got up again and rushed to Matthew's side. That's right. For some reason, Berserker did not attack Matthew. Instead, he attacked the others. Other than Matthew, the one who was closest to Berserker was Riley, who could not move freely. Berserker rushed to Riley and raised the electric pole that had been transformed into a noble artifact. Sister. Anna, who got up again, screamed in shock. Boom. Chapter 343. Boom. The Grade D electric pole relic smashed onto the ground, causing the ground to shatter. However, Riley was nowhere to be seen on the shattered ground, and under the electric pole, Riley was not sent back to the Martyr's Palace either. Instead, gosh, I almost died, Riley grumbled. Sister. Anna looked in the direction of the voice. At the same time, Mashu and Gudatsi also looked at him. He saw a man wearing a black windbreaker, black leather shoes, and a black top hat standing on top of a pile of rubble. The man was carrying two identical girls in his arms. They were Stheno, who had escaped, and Euryale, who had almost died under Berserker's baton. Ah, it's the mysterious assassin. Godatsi screamed. The man was Wuming, who had rushed over with Stheno. You took so long to come back, assassin. Euryale sat in Wuming's arms, holding Wuming's neck to keep her balance. She complained to Wuming in a dissatisfied tone. Which family are you from? If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have saved you. One Stheno is enough for me. Wuming said helplessly. How can you blame me for that? You're not a gentleman at all. Just like Euryale, Stheno sat in Wuming's other arms. She held Wuming's neck to keep her balance while refuting Wuming. Wuming walked toward Godatsi with Stheno. Wuming noticed Berserker in the enchantment. Berserker was the Berserker who seemed to be one of the Knights of the Round Table. When he suddenly encountered Berserker, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Wuming directly used Jack the Ripper's inherent barrier, the mist, to trap Berserker inside. Wuming had used the tactic of trapping the enemy in the enchantment before. Wuming had set up a large number of magic formations in the enchantment. After bringing Angelica and Beatrice into the enchantment, Wuming retreated. Wuming could have chosen not to enter the enchantment, but he had to say a few words to them. Although the caster of the enchantment was neither scientific nor magical, Wuming had such an ability. After all, Wuming was the root dragon. The adaptability of time and space was reflected here. The enchantment was like a flexible Rubik's cube in Wuming's hand. Wuming could arrange the enchantment in various ways. After that, Wuming took Olga and Marie away from there, and went to a small shop not far away. Wuming left some mana in the enchantment, which was enough to support Wuming and the others. The enchantment disappeared, and Berserker was released. After that, Wuming encountered Godatsi and the others, as well as Stheno and Euryale who were chasing them. After using his noble phantasm Maria Ripper, and the enchantment noble phantasm the Dark Mist, Godatsi, Stheno, and Euryale were transferred to the enchantment. At that time, Berserker, who was trapped in the Dark Mist, had not been released yet. When Wuming chased Stheno, he also checked Berserker's location and found that he was quite far away from Wuming, so he was relieved to play with Stheno. But after a while, Berserker seemed to have sensed a trace of aura coming from the barrier, and it began to go berserk. Wuming could sense that Berserker was running around in the enchantment. And just when Wuming and Stheno were on their way back to Godatsi and the others, Wuming sensed that Berserker was approaching Godatsi and the others. After all, the Dark Mist was about the size of London City. Although it was not small, it was not that big either. It could only be said that Berserker was very lucky to have found the location of Godatsi and the others. As expected of Lucky Bee, after Wuming sensed all of this, Wuming hurriedly carried Stheno and rushed over at full speed. However, Wuming was worried that Godatsi and the others would have an accident, so he directly used his Dragonist item, which he hadn't used for a long time, and rushed over with agility beyond X. Why do you think Wuming did not hesitate to cheat to bring his treasure trove? It was because the treasures in the treasure trove were really helpful to Wuming. Especially Wuming, who was an assassin at the moment. The treasures were really helpful. After Wuming used an item to speed up his journey, the scene where Wuming saved Euryale, who was about to die under the telephone pole, appeared. The reason why Wuming did not directly remove the enchantment was that Berserker was not far from them, and he might be attacked by other servants. After all, Wuming had verified that Winterwood City had indeed summoned the 7 servants. If he directly removed the enchantment, Berserker would definitely find them. In addition, Berserker did not find Godatsi and the others in the enchantment, so Wuming wanted to meet with Godatsi and the others to ask something in the enchantment. Obviously, the orange-haired girl and the shield lady were not people of this world. After crossing through time and space, their space-time aura was a bit serious. The reason why Olga Marie did not have the space-time aura was because she was dead. She was just like a servant. She was dead. She was a mass of magic power. She was a spirit. But even so, Wuming still suspected that Olga Marie had something to do with Godatsi and the others. Stheno only complained because Wuming's super speed scared the goddess. After all, Wuming's agility was beyond EX, and he was comparable to Wuming's phoenix incarnation. However, The item that increased speed was not something that everyone could use. If Olga Marie used it, she would explode in an instant. After all, if her physical fitness was not up to par, she naturally couldn't use it. Take Wu Ming's avatar for example. In the world of the Godslayers, Wu Ming's original body had descended. Even though he was still in his infancy state, the origin dragon's physical body that had undergone some minor baptisms had become extremely powerful. Wu Ming's incarnation had limitations because Wu Ming still had room to grow. It was estimated that when Wu Ming was fully grown, Wu Ming could use multiple incarnations at will, and their power would also be greatly improved. But if Wu Ming's incarnation was used by his incarnation, the limitations would be quite big. After all, if the strength of the incarnation was not enough, it would be torn apart in an instant. As for Assassin, the reason why Silent Wonder didn't cheat and let the 12 clones follow him was because Silent Wonder couldn't use any of his clones. Even if he could use them, the power was very small. If Wu Ming used them by force, he would die. Therefore, it was really useful to bring Dragonist, a treasure trove that contained a large number of very useful treasures. At that moment, Berserker, who lost his target, began to roar furiously. Leia, Godotzi and the others realized that the enemy had not been eliminated yet. Chapter 344. Godotzi, Matthew, and Anna tensed up when they heard Berserker's roar. Wu Ming, Stheno, and Euryale, who were in his arms, weren't nervous at all. Stheno and Euryale were goddesses, so they didn't feel anything from a mere berserker. Even when Euryale almost died under Berserker's stick, she didn't react at all. She was still chatting happily with Wu Ming and Stheno. Wu Ming, on the other hand, wasn't afraid at all. Wu Ming had been through a lot, so a mere berserker wasn't enough to scare him. Wu Ming wasn't scared at all. Besides, Wu Ming only used the dark mist to trap Berserker because Olga Marie was there. There were many ways to deal with Berserker, but it would be a waste of time to fight Berserker. After all, this city was filled with danger. Olga Marie might already be in danger outside. Berserker was Wu Ming's half-master after all. It was better to deal with him as soon as possible. Just as Berserker was about to charge at Wu Ming and the others, especially Wu Ming, Berserker realized that his movements were sluggish as if he had fallen into a bottomless swamp. Berserker is indeed Berserker. You didn't even notice the trap I set under your feet? Wu Ming shook his head in boredom. At that moment, a few stones around Berserker lit up. Simple and mysterious runes could be seen on the stones. That's right, they were Lune runes. These stones were rune stones. Just like Rin Enbin and Luvia's gem magic, these rune stones had the same effect. Gem magic was to store spells and magic power in gems in advance, and then use them directly when needed. Magicians needed spells and magic power to cast magic, but because the spells and magic power needed to be used were all stored in gems, the use of gem magic was only to release the gems that stored the spells and magic power. Releasing the gems only required a small amount of mana, so gem magic was very practical. However, since the gems used for gem magic were single-use, it was mostly used by nobles. Of course, Rin Enbin didn't look like a noble anymore, but she was telling the truth when she said that she was down and out. As for the rune, it was engraved on the stone in advance. When it was used, it only needed to be released. However, the rune was extremely powerful. Although it wasn't in terms of attack, it was extremely powerful in other aspects. Therefore, the stone made of the rune could be said to be extremely precious. At this moment, the stones that trapped Berserker were engraved with large amounts of Lune runes that had the effect of slowing and suppressing. Just one stone was enough to cause an obvious effect. At this moment, dozens of Lune runes lit up around Berserker. These dozens of rune stones formed an intricate magic formation with Berserker in the center. This magic formation was made of dozens of binding Lune runes. It wasn't easy to bind Berserker, who had an A-rank endurance. Of course, if Berserker could move, he would be able to escape from the magic formation. However, Berserker was like a fish on the chopping block. It was impossible for him to escape. What? If one were to ask Wu Ming where the Lune runes engraved on the runestones came from, Wu-Ming would say that when he first learned the Lune magic, he would experiment with stones by the roadside. Over time, countless rune stones accumulated. Therefore, Wu-Ming chose a portion of the useful rune stones and stored them in his Lune rune space. Of course, Wu-Ming hadn't completed the Lune space at that time, so it was still very small. Therefore, Wu-Ming only stored a small portion of the rune stones and left the rest in the country of shadow. After that, Wu-Ming would sometimes create some rune stones when he was free. After all, Wu-Ming knew that there would be a day when he would need them. Just like now, he couldn't release the true name of the relic in his treasure vault, nor could he use the advanced magic of assassin. Now he only needed to use a little bit of mana to recreate the Kanzaki magic. One had to know that Silent Cry's mana level was EX. In that case, there was no shortage of mana. Leia. Although Berserker was bound, he still roared unwillingly. Facing the immobile Berserker, Wu-Ming gently placed Stheno and Urieli on the ground and walked towards Berserker. Wu-Ming came before Berserker and took out 18 rune stones from the black space beside him. As expected, you're Lancelot, right? Wu-Ming said softly. When Wu-Ming said Lancelot's name, Berserker suddenly fell silent for a moment, but soon returned to his frenzied state. Wu-Ming smiled with pity. The hero who was known as the Knight of the Lake and the Flower of Knights, who had achieved countless feats and received the blessings of the elves, had actually turned into a monster. What a joke. You've been chasing after me. I'm afraid you're obsessed with me. When Wu-Ming was in Camelot, almost all the knights respected, admired and worshipped Wu-Ming. However, Lancelot was the only one who could be considered a fanatic. However, Lancelot wasn't loyal to Wu-Ming. As Arthur Artoria's knight, Lancelot had always been exceptionally loyal to her, but he also worshipped Wu-Ming fervently. Although he didn't express it, Wu-Ming could feel it. After Wu-Ming's departure, Lancelot's fanaticism shifted to Guinevere. When Guinevere was tricked by Morgan Le Fay to reveal his love for Wu-Ming and was about to be executed, Lancelot didn't hesitate to save Guinevere and escape from Camelot. However, because of this, Lancelot became the second fuse that affected the fall of Britain after Wu-Ming. Surrounding the incident between Lancelot and Guinevere, the people questioned, the nobles stirred up trouble, and Artoria's power was affected. This was a severe psychological blow to Lancelot. Then Guinevere said, I should be executed. It's not only a release but also a way to lighten the king's burden. After that, Lancelot sent Guinevere back. After that, Artoria successfully exiled Guinevere and saved his life. Lancelot had always been obsessed with Wu-Ming, which was why he kept chasing after Wu-Ming. Not only that, but turning the electric pole into a noble relic and disguising his appearance were also very similar to Lancelot's experience. Defeating the enemy with a tree branch and completing the heroic feat of hiding his identity. Wu-Ming guessed that these two things could be upgraded to noble relic or skill. All these signs were very clear. Coupled with Wu-Ming's probing, Wu-Ming was now very sure that Berserker was Lancelot. I didn't expect to meet you here, Lancelot. How sad. Wu-Ming slowly placed the 18 rune stones around Lancelot and chatted with him. Leia. Lancelot screamed miserably. I know you have a lot to say to me, but let's wait until next time. Compared to Berserker, I think Saber is more suitable for you. After placing the 18 Lune runes on the stones, Wu-Ming turned around and left. At this moment, Lancelot seemed to have calmed down. He stiffly performed a knight salute to Wu-Ming. Octagodin. A magic spell that was comparable to a city's noble phantasm was released. In an instant, a violent explosion came from behind Wu-Ming. The flames and smoke of the explosion were more than 10 meters high, but it did not burn Wu-Ming and the others at all. Goodbye, Lancelot. Chapter 345. The flames raged and burned the entire city of London. After Berserker left, Wu-Ming deactivated the inherent barrier. Everyone returned to the burning city of Winterwood. Hey, can you hear me? That's great. The device here suddenly showed a large amount of magic, and I couldn't contact you guys. That scared me. Thank goodness you guys are fine. As soon as they returned to Winterwood, Gadatsi's wrist glowed, and a virtual screen appeared in front of everyone. On the screen was the face of a kind and dispirited young man. He had the aura of a loser. Is this the magician who made the sound? What a loser. That's right. I thought a magician who can use a remote screen like this would be more reliable. How disgusting. Steno and O'Reilly looked at the young man on the screen with disdain. What's going on? Wait, what's going on? The young man was frustrated at first, but then he realized that the two followers of the goddess in front of him were enemies. Ahaha. Anyway, they're not enemies now. Roman, don't worry about it. Godotzi smiled awkwardly. I'll explain the situation to you later, Dr. Roman. Matthew said to the young man seriously. Is that so? Well, it's good that you guys are fine. Just now when I suddenly couldn't contact you guys, everyone was worried sick. The doctor called Roman began to spread the dispirited atmosphere, as he constantly complained and complained. Yes, I know, Dr. Roman. Godotzi answered Roman helplessly. Matthew noticed that Wuming, the main person who solved the crisis, did not say anything. He was frowning as if he was thinking about something. Mr. Assassin, are you all right? Matthew asked worriedly. Godotzi, who was talking to Roman, also looked at Wuming. That's right. Mr. Assassin helped us. Please let us know if you have any problems. Godotzi smiled innocently and looked at Wuming, who was standing behind Steno and O'Reilly. Wuming shook his head. I'm fine. I just want to ask you guys something. Ask us? Godotzi and Matthew looked at each other in confusion. Oh, I need to pick up my master. I'll come back later. Wuming did not wait for them to respond and turned around to leave. By the way, there shouldn't be any danger around here, but a sudden intrusion like just now. You guys should be careful. I'll be back soon. After that, Wuming disappeared. Li Xiang Mushu that servant is? Roman asked with a slightly dignified tone. He's the one who helped us subdue the two goddesses, Matthew explained. Also, we met a berserker in Assassin's enchantment. Assassin defeated him easily, Godotzi said excitedly. Enchantment? I guess that's why we can't contact you. Roman touched his chin and pondered. Then, do you know the real names of the berserker and the assassin who left, and the real names of the two goddesses? Roman's voice became very soft. He looked at Steno and O'Reilly carefully. After all, he was a little embarrassed in front of the two goddesses. How dare you talk about the goddesses in front of them, magician who's not here? Steno was an assassin after all, so he could naturally hear it. My real name is Steno, and this is my sister O'Reilly. Before Godotzi and the others could react, Steno said his and O'Reilly's real names casually. After all, we've been defeated by that man. As goddesses, we're prepared to become his captives. O'Reilly explained why the two of them had told her their real names without hesitation. She also explained why they were no longer enemies. Is that so? Roman's shoulders drooped helplessly. Godotzi tried to recall the real names of Wuming and the berserker who was defeated by Wuming. I don't know Mr. Assassin's real name, but as for berserker's real name, I remember Mr. Assassin called him Lancelot. What? Without waiting for Godotzi to finish, Roman interrupted him in surprise, and even gave Godotzi a fright. Matthew came to Godotzi's side, and shielded Godotzi with his body. Then he protested to Roman. Doctor, please keep your voice down. You're scaring the seniors. I'm sorry, but this is shocking news. Roman put his palms together and apologized. Then his expression turned serious. Matthew and Godotzi were confused. Judging from your tone, Mr. Assassin called him Lancelot, right? If that's the case, he can't be a nobody. Roman looked at them seriously. Someone who can defeat the Knight of the Lake can't be weak. Even if the Knight of the Lake has lost his mind. That assassin is very strong. Doctor, what do you mean? Godotzi understood. Although you don't know Mr. Assassin's real name, there is no doubt that he can rival the Knights of the Round Table, and even surpass them. To be honest, I really don't understand why such a person is Mr. Assassin. Although the Knights of the Round Table have berserker adaptability, I still find it hard to accept. After all, the Knights of the Round Table were noble knights. Even the rebellious knight Mordred didn't do anything that violated the knight's code. The reason why Roman was surprised that Wuming, as an assassin, could defeat berserker was because assassins were generally weak. Generally, they can only be used to collect information and assassinate their master. Let alone berserker, even caster sometimes can't defeat them. Let alone rider, saber, lancer and archer with 3 mounts. That was why caster and assassin were known as the weakest among the 7 classes. Caster was also a powerful enemy after the workshop was completed, but assassin didn't have any other advantages, so sometimes assassin was even weaker than caster. But he used assassin to defeat Stheno, who is also an assassin, and even Euryale, who is an archer. After that, he still had the strength to defeat berserker. It seems that you have encountered a powerful servant. The more Roman analyzed, the brighter Matthew and Gadazzi's eyes became. Stheno and Euryale kept smiling as they watched the 3 of them talking. They didn't interrupt. After all, they knew Wu Ming's identity, so they wouldn't be too surprised by some things. And according to the various phenomena just now, he can be said to be a very easy person to get along with. If his master agrees, you can cooperate with them to solve the mutation of Singularity F. If he didn't have a master, I would have asked Tachika to sign a contract with him. With him, I won't worry about your safety anymore. Roman looked regretful. That's great. Matthew, I can solve this singularity soon. Gadazzi hugged Matthew happily. Although Roman meant that Matthew couldn't guarantee Gadazzi's safety, Matthew knew that Roman didn't think so much, so he didn't say anything. He just smiled and nodded to Gadazzi. Matthew, Tachika Fujimaru. Suddenly, a familiar voice came to Gadazzi and others. Chapter 346. Matthew, Tachika Fujimaru. A familiar voice came, and the 2 couldn't help but look at the source of the voice. Wu Ming and Olga Marie stood not far away. Wu Ming didn't do anything, but Olga Marie looked like she had finally found the organization. Of course she wouldn't admit it. Director, are you still alive? Sure enough, Roman was a rather clumsy person. What do you mean, Roman Aikman? Are you looking forward to my death? Obviously, Roman Aikman was his real name, and Roman was an abbreviation. Olga Marie angrily walked to the virtual screen and stared at Roman. How could that be, Director? It's great that you're okay. Roman tiredly dealt with Olga Marie, feeling rather helpless. Director also successfully came here. That's great. Matthew said happily when he saw that Olga Marie was fine. Olga Marie was a little unnatural when she heard Matthew's words. Wu Ming felt that Olga Marie was a little resistant to Matthew. Or more accurately, she felt guilty. Seems like there's a story. Wu Ming thought carefully. That's great, Director is also fine. Gadazzi also smiled happily. Ahem. Speaking of which, are you the only 2 here? Where are the others? And why are you sitting in this position? And where is Lev? Olga Marie asked, then looked at Roman on the virtual screen. Wu Ming, who was behind Olga Marie, slightly raised his eyebrows when he heard this, but quickly returned to normal. Sure enough, Lev is indeed related to this group of people, but it seems they don't know Lev's true identity. Through the behavior of this group of people, Wu Ming could naturally see their character, and it was obvious that they were not on the same side as Leviticus. Wu Ming looked at the male lead on the screen. Only this male lead was something that Wu Ming couldn't see through. The so-called couldn't see through meant that Roman was like a god and like a human, like a living person and like a dead person. If there's a chance, I still have to meet this person in person. Wu Ming always had a feeling that Roman was not the culprit behind the burning of Winterwood City, but also the person who couldn't get away from the root cause of the black mud. Because of Olga Marie's doubts, Roman didn't notice Wu Ming's gaze. Currently, except for Tachika Fujimaru, the rest of the 47 masters are trapped in the shell's body and are, because the explosion was in the center of the control, Roman said regretfully. Wu Ming couldn't help but laugh. Fortunately, he held it back in time and didn't reveal it. If a mere explosion could kill Lev, Wu Ming would thank the heavens. Lev. But after hearing this bad news, Olga Marie looked like she couldn't accept it. Through the magical connection between Wu Ming and Olga Marie, Wu Ming could clearly sense that Olga Marie's magical power was very unstable. If he had to describe it, it would be like a human after their faith collapsed. But Olga Marie was indeed a famous magician. She quickly calmed down and began to understand the condition of their base through Roman, and began to give orders. Wu Ming wasn't interested in listening to this. He walked over to the Gorgon sisters and Anna's young master, Sakura Madu. Anna was sitting on a small rock with the sleeping Sakura Madu in her arms. Stheno and Euryale were sitting on the left of Anna and Sakura Madu. Wu Ming walked over, and Stheno spoke first. "You finally have time to talk to me. I thought you had forgotten about me." Stheno narrowed her eyes at Wu Ming, who was walking over. What a greedy man. Not only did he capture me, but he also captured another me, and heartlessly abandoned us. How heartless. Euryale continued Stheno's words and also narrowed her eyes at Wu Ming. "I wouldn't dare to capture the goddess. I heard that anyone who has anything to do with the gods of Greek mythology doesn't have a good ending." Wu Ming shrugged and said disinterestedly, "But those are all mortals. If it's you, I don't think you'll suffer," Stheno said cheerfully. Wu Ming ignored the two of them. He walked to Anna's right and sat down. "Is she asleep?" Wu Ming looked at Sakura Madu and asked Anna. After all, she was his sister-in-law in another world. He should at least show some concern. Thank you for not killing my sister." Anna replied first. Then, she thanked Wu Ming softly. By now, Anna's identity had been made known to everyone. She was the youngest sister of the Gorgon sisters. She had devoured two of her sisters and turned into a monster, Medusa. Of course, the current Anna was Medusa's infant body. In other words, she hadn't killed her sisters yet. Although she had made up her mind to kill Stheno and Euryale, it was undoubtedly torture for Anna. Stheno and Euryale loved their sister. Just like how Anna would protect Euryale, Anna also loved her sister deeply. If it weren't for the curse, Medusa wouldn't have devoured her sister to protect her chastity. Even though Stheno and Euryale did it willingly, it was still a torture for Medusa. It was the pain of killing her loved ones. "I didn't want to see such a curse. That's why I chose to do it." Wu Ming looked at Gadotsi and the others as he conversed with Anna. "But because of that, I've been on the brink of death," Euryale suddenly interrupted. Jack the Ripper's relic, Mary Ripper, was a curse. There were 3 conditions to trigger the curse: fog, night, and the target is a female. Back then, Wu Ming had activated the relic during the day. Although Wu Ming had released the fog, which was the dark fog, and the target, Euryale, was a female, Mary Ripper, which didn't fulfill the 3 conditions, only dealt damage. As Wu Ming had deliberately held back and Euryale's skills and the god's core of the goddess helped to block the attack, Euryale didn't die. However, it also caused Euryale to be unable to move. After all, Euryale was indeed injured, and Silent Wonder had placed the pseudo-sky lock on her, which almost caused her to die at Lancelot's hands. "Although you came in time to save me, you're the one who caused me to be in danger. Remember to take responsibility," Stheno finished for Euryale. "Help me protect my beloved sister," the two of them said in unison. Chapter 347. Wu Ming raised an eyebrow at Stheno and Euryale's shameless request. "You two really know how to take advantage of the situation." Why did he say that? It was because Stheno and Euryale seemed to have been connected when they came into contact with Wu Ming. They knew Wu Ming's identity. He was an extremely powerful and majestic legendary dragon from beyond this world, the Dragon of Origin. The two of them knew about the dangers of the Holy Grail War, so they wanted to protect Anna. However, they were unable to protect Anna, so they wanted Anna to kill her and recreate the legend of the Gorgon monster. The appearance of the Gorgon meant that they had the power to protect themselves, but Wu Ming disrupted their plan. However, through Wu Ming, Stheno and Euryale found the hope of protecting Anna, so they made the request. "Sister." Anna looked at Stheno and Euryale touched. Although she was already dead, and her safety was no longer a concern, she was still happy to hear that someone cared about her. "Sure enough, no matter what, my sister still loves me," Anna thought to herself. However, Stheno and Euryale stood up as if they were interrogating him. They walked to Wu Ming and looked into his eyes. "So, what's your answer?" the two asked in unison. "I didn't want to fight the other servants." My goal is to solve this disaster, Wu Ming said in confusion, which made Stheno and Euryale a little unhappy. However, now is the time for the servants to unite. Of course, I won't abandon Anna, my ally. Wu Ming put his hand on Anna's head. Then, Anna slapped Wu Ming's hand away. Don't touch my head. Anna stared at Wu Ming with her small eyes under the hood. She was especially intimidating. Wu Ming raised his hand that was slapped away by Anna and smiled awkwardly. Stheno and Euryale smiled as well. Of course, they were laughing because Wu Ming was defeated by Anna. Wu Ming looked at his hand in confusion. That shouldn't be. May you and the others like it when I touch their heads. Did my affinity aura lose its effectiveness after becoming an assassin? Wu Ming shook his head and stopped thinking about it. By the way, you two are now someone else's servants, right? Wu Ming looked at Stheno and Euryale. That's right. Our master is a green tall hat man. Stheno nodded. She must have used the Holy Grail to cheat, Euryale said. That's how she was able to summon the 7 servants again. And it doesn't exclude the possibility that he can continue to summon servants. Wu Ming nodded. Stheno was right. After all, Wu Ming did not feel that Lev was a human being. Since he could maintain the contract of 8 servants, including Artoria, he was definitely not an ordinary person. However, it did not exclude the possibility that Lev had placed the contract on Artoria's heart, which was the Holy Grail. You wrapped this chain around me to prevent my master from using the command incantation, right? Euryale raised her small hand. The silver-white chain with golden light decorated her like a priceless accessory. I have one too. Is this a slave's chain? Stheno also raised his wrist, and said with a wicked smile. Although it's a simplified version of Enkidu, it's still a divine weapon. It's still effective against gods, Wu Ming explained. Although I wanted to kill you to be safe, I still had some questions to ask you, so I kept you two alive. Now it seems that you two are really a burden, Wu Ming said with disdain. Don't talk about my sister like that. Anna glared at Wu Ming angrily. Her face under the cloak was full of dissatisfaction. Then Sakura Madu woke up. Wu Ming was able to escape from Anna's glare. Wu Ming even wondered if he would be petrified if Anna glared at him for a while longer. Wu Ming then took out some high-level runestones and sealed Stheno and Euryale's mana. He also added a series of negative buffs to their attacks. Of course, Wu Ming only did this after they agreed. After all, Wu Ming was not a bad person. Cough, cough. Soon, Olga Marie finished giving Roman her orders. Anyway, you will replace me as the commander of Chaldea for now. We'll talk about it after I return. Olga Marie said with an imposing tone as she flipped her hair. Yes, sir. Roman was also affected by Olga Marie's imposing manner. He nodded solemnly. However, Wu Ming shook his head regretfully when he heard Olga Marie's last sentence. After all, Olga Marie was already dead. She could now be considered a heroic spirit. Other humans could enter the heroic spirit palace after death, but Olga Marie would disappear after this crisis was resolved. Moreover, she would truly die. She wouldn't exist in the heroic spirit palace. If possible, I'd better save her. Wu Ming thought to himself. No matter what, Olga Marie was still half a servant to Wu Ming. Even if she had bad intentions at the beginning, Wu Ming now understood Olga Marie. He felt that Olga Marie was still a good person. If he could save her, he should. Are you done with your discussion? Can you answer my question? Wu Ming and the other servants walked towards Olga Marie, Godatsi, and the others. Stheno and Euryale naturally followed Wu Ming. As for Anna, she followed her sister. This resulted in Olga Marie, Matthew, and Godatsi standing on one side, while Wu Ming, Stheno, Euryale, Anna, and Anna's master, Sakura Madu, stood on the other side. The situation was slightly serious. Wu Ming had 4 servants on his side, while Olga Marie only had Matthew, a demi-servant. At best, he was a human with the power of a servant, but at worst, he was a half-servant. Looking at the slightly tense scene, Roman on the other side of the screen gulped. What do you want to know? Olga Marie calmly looked at Wu Ming, her nominal servant. Please tell me where you came from and your intentions. I will judge whether you can get our help based on your answers. Wu Ming looked into Olga Marie's eyes. Although with Wu Ming's hearing, He was almost as good as Stheno and the others when they were pooping. Is this why you volunteered to be my servant? Olga Marie couldn't help but ask. That's not the point. The point is the name you called when you were in danger, Leviticus. When she heard the name Lev from Wu Ming's mouth, Olga Marie's eyes suddenly shrank. You know or no, Rafe? Chapter 348. Then, Wu Ming told them about his exploration of the Yuanzhong mountain, where he met Saber, and a man in a green tall hat, who called himself Rafe Lenore Floros. He killed Saber's master and put the Holy Grail into Saber's heart in an unknown way, and according to Rafe, he received the king's order to exterminate the human race. Then, when I wanted to attack Rafe, Saber used the Holy Grail to activate the noble phantasm, and I was blown away. Stheno and the other 7 servants were summoned after I was blown away. Wu Ming's words made Olga Marie, Gadotsi, Matthew, and Roman show an expression of disbelief. That man gave us the order to destroy all the creatures in this city, but I always feel that he wanted to get rid of this man. Stheno looked at Wu Ming, and it was obvious that this man was Wu Ming. In short, I always feel that this Rafe should be the Rafe that you said has been sacrificed. That's why I followed you, Olga Marie. Wu Ming finished and waited quietly. After all, Olga Marie and the others needed time to digest. It's unbelievable. Professor Rafe actually. Roman on the other side of the screen said with a somewhat dull voice. Professor Rafe gave me a pretty good impression. Gadotsi scratched the back of her head. Well, Professor Rafe is very popular in Chaldea. I didn't expect. Matthew's eyes dimmed. I don't allow you to insult Rafe. Suddenly, Olga Marie roared and interrupted them. Rafe is dead. Even if he is still alive, Rafe would not want to destroy the human race. Although Olga Marie was shocked, she didn't waver because of soundless one-sided words. Let's not talk about the fact that Rafe was at the center of the explosion in the control room. It's impossible for him to survive. Furthermore, even if Rafe is still alive, he has no reason to destroy human beings like you said, Olga Marie argued. So, I don't believe what you said. I don't think Rafe would do such a thing. In the end, Olga Marie stared at Wu Ming's eyes, quite like an angry little female cat. Wu Ming shook his head with a smile. He knew that this would be the result. When facing danger, her first reaction was to ask Rafe for help. It seemed that Olga Marie really relied on Rafe. People's hearts are unpredictable. Although Rafe is a kind and reliable person in your eyes, you are too dependent on him and ignored his negative side. What if he is pretending? Wu Ming began to preach to Marie. You. Olga Marie glared at Wu Ming. However, Wu Ming interrupted Olga Marie, who was about to say something. And weren't you in the center of the explosion center? Wu Ming's words were like a sharp thorn that pierced the hearts of the Chaldeans. Yes, why was the director in the center of the explosion alive? Since there was already an example, it was not unacceptable that Rafe, who was in the center of the explosion, was still alive. Moreover, if the explosion was arranged by Rafe, it's not strange that he is alive. Wu Ming's words were very heavy. This sentence, like a sharper thorn, pierced everyone's heart. Now Gadotsi and Matthew were completely confused. On the other hand, Roman had a thoughtful look on his face. But Olga Marie still didn't believe, and wanted to refute Wu Ming's words. Well, it's also possible that someone pretended to be Rafe, first to frame him, and second to deceive people. Wu Ming's tone was light. He shrugged his shoulders and waved to the crowd. In an instant, the original atmosphere was like a balloon, burst by Wu Ming's words. Everything is possible. Ha 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 ha. Wu Ming laughed. The nervous crowd suddenly relaxed. Assassin. Then Olga Marie, who felt like she had been played, was furious again. Ha ha. Looking at the arrogant Olga Marie angry, Wu Ming couldn't help but laugh. Gadotsi, Matthew, and Roman were relieved. Assassin is right. It's also possible that someone used the image of the dead Professor Rafe to do evil. Matthew said righteously. And you still have the task to solve the singularity, and according to Assassin, this singularity was caused by the guy who pretended to be Rafe. Roman continued Matthew's words. Then we are bound to confront the fake. Damn it. How dare he pretend to be Rafe, I must teach him a lesson. Olga Marie also calmed down, but they still talked about the guy who pretended to be Rafe. Then everyone, let's work hard together. Gudatsi clenched her fists and encouraged everyone with a smile. Of course there's no problem with assassin. But you sleepyhead, just don't make trouble. Olga Marie crossed her arms and looked at Gudatsi with disdain. After all, Wu Ming was still Olga Marie's follower. Even if there were doubts and distrust between the two sides, Olga Marie was relieved that they could talk like this. It's good to be motivated, but usually such a team of heroes will be wiped out in the end. Stheno smiled and looked at Gudatsi and the others. Stheno and Euryale didn't speak before because they knew how to read people's expressions. As for Anna and Sakura Madu, they were the kind of people who didn't talk much. Now that everyone had left the oppressive atmosphere, Stheno couldn't help but mock them. The goddess who has lost her ability to fight should take care of herself. Olga Marie was indeed arrogant and dared to confront the goddess. Director, she's a goddess, please be a little more polite. Gudatsi whispered in Olga Marie's ear. Miss Stheno too, please calm down. Matthew also tried to calm them down. Seeing how energetic they were, Wu Ming also calmed down. Wu Ming didn't think that Rafe Lionel Floros was a fake. Wu Ming said that someone might be pretending to be Rafe because he wanted to take care of his temporary master's feelings. Rafe's tone when he introduced himself didn't sound like an imposter at all. Wu Ming used his omnipotent senses to confirm that this was the real Rafe, and not an imposter. After all, sometimes mentality and momentum were the key to victory. So it's time to answer my question. Wu Ming suddenly asked. Everyone just remembered that the two sides were supposed to exchange information. That's true. Then I, who interrogated your master, will tell you. Olga Marie stood up. Chapter 349. Olga Marie briefly explained their situation to Wu Ming. They came from a research organization called Chaldea in the future. Its full name was Finest Chaldea, or Chaldea for short. In 2015, Chaldea detected that human beings would go extinct in 2016, so they began to study the cause of human extinction. Later, Chaldea's people found a singularity in history under the detection of the near-future observation lens, Sheba. To put it simply, singularities were cancer cells that were formed from irregular history within the regular history. It was a cancer that could endanger the entire history of human beings. This singularity was where Wu Ming and the others were, the unrecorded Winterwood City Holy Grail War in 2004. They determined that this singularity was the cancer that would make human beings go extinct in 2016. Therefore, they used Chaldea's device that could send masters through time and space, and prepared to send 48 magicians with ray-shift adaptability and master performance to this era to solve this singularity. However, for unknown reasons, when the 47 masters were preparing to be sent, Chaldea was hit by an explosion. Most of the facilities were damaged, and the survivors were less than 20 people except for the 47 frozen masters. The reason why 47 people were frozen was because Gudatsi, the master, dozed off during a meeting and was kicked out by Olga Marie. It had to be said that Gudatsi was really lucky. Then, when Gudatsi wanted to save Matthew, she was trapped in the central control room. Originally a human, Matthew was summoned by Chaldea and bestowed with power when he was on the verge of death. Then the Rayshift automatically selected masters, and Gudatsi and her servant, Matthew, were brought to this world. As for the rest, Wu Ming knew most of it, so Wu Ming stopped Olga Marie, who still wanted to continue speaking. I understand the general situation. In short, you need to solve this singularity, and let history return to the right path, right? Yes, that's true, but what's the matter with your easy voice? Said Olga Marie crossly. After all, the city had summoned 14 servants, and it was very dangerous. My mission is also to protect this world from calamity. Although I'm still an assassin, I'm not that strong, but if there's a chance, I'll change my class. What? Olga Marie, Roman, Gudatsi and the others were shocked. Even Stheno, Euryale, and the others were shocked. The reason why servants were servants was because their spirit base was fixed, and they couldn't change their class. However, Wu Ming actually said that he wanted to change his class, which undoubtedly surprised everyone. Well, after all, I am special. Wu Ming smiled. But aren't you breaking the rules? Changing your class and rank? Roman began to mutter. That's only if there's a chance. It's not that easy to change your class. Wu Ming shrugged. In short, let's leave here first. If we stay in the same place for a long time, it's inevitable that other servants will come to find us. Everyone nodded in agreement. After that, Roman said that if they needed help, they could contact him, and then turned off the communication. After all, Chaldea still needed him. Then Wu Ming, Olga Marie, Gadotsi, Matthew, Steno Uariley, Anna, and Sakura Madhu formed a small team and embarked on the path to defeat the great demon king. Soon, Wu Ming and the others arrived at the villa where Wu Ming and Gilgamesh lived. The reason why they came here was because of Steno's words. The other side has a servant that can kill a god. Are you sure you want to go directly to Yuanzhong Mountain? Although Olga Marie and the others had already chosen Yuanzhong Mountain as their target, because of Steno's words, everyone had to follow Wu Ming. And also because of Wu Ming's words. I have a super first-class servant with me. In this way, Olga Marie and the others followed Wu Ming to the villa. In the small villa, Wu Ming skillfully prepared tea for everyone, and then casually sat down as if it was his own home. It seems that she's not at home. Wu Ming didn't find Gilgamesh in the house. Thinking about it, Gilgamesh wasn't a person who would stay idle. Perhaps she left after discovering the change. But he didn't rule out the possibility that she went to find him. With the idea of a short rest, Wu Ming didn't rush to leave with everyone. Gorgon's 3 sisters didn't feel uncomfortable. After all, the 3 of them were goddesses. Sakura Madhu was too young to care, and Gadotsi and the others were sitting on the sofa with a slightly strange expression. What's wrong? Wu Ming naturally saw their doubts, so he directly asked. Is this the house of Assassin's previous master? Matthew asked. Gadotsi and Olga Marie also nodded. After all, Wu Ming's move was too skillful. It felt like he was the owner of this house. If it was their master's house, it would make sense. No, this house was bought in my name, and I originally didn't have a master. Wu Ming calmly took a sip of tea and then said, Hey. Gadotsi, Matthew, and Olga Marie immediately yelled. I forgot to tell you this. I came here on my own initiative. If I have to say, my master should be the Great Holy Grail. Wu Ming calmly took another sip of tea and slowly said, Wait a minute, what's going on? Olga Marie slammed the cup on the table and looked at Wu Ming like she was looking at an animal. The sound of the teacup being put down scared Gadotsi and Matthew. If the teacup wasn't sturdy enough, the boiling hot tea would have spilled onto Olga Marie's hand. Although I know your identity is not ordinary and can change your class, but can you still show up on your own accord? Wu Ming calmly took a sip of tea and put down the teacup. He then looked at Olga Marie without any emotion. That's right. Sorry, my identity is not ordinary, so I can do whatever I want. Director. Calm down. Gadotsi smiled awkwardly. Then Olga Marie angrily sat on the sofa, and then grumbled by herself. She kept muttering, How can you cheat like this? It's really against the rules. By the way, is the companion that assassin mentioned not here? Matthew awkwardly smiled and began to change the topic to discuss the purpose of everyone here. She probably left here to find me. Wu Ming smiled. Don't worry, it can be said that no one can kill her. Of course, if her stubbornness flares up, the result might be different. Thinking that if Gilgamesh was angered, it meant that he had lost half the battle, especially with Lancer, who had the power to kill gods. If Gilgamesh fought him head-on, he would be at a disadvantage. Let's take a break here. After all, if we plan for the worst, we should still have 6 enemies. Wu Ming looked at everyone seriously. Chapter 350. Whoosh! Wu Ming pulled out a moving blackboard and began to explain the power of both sides. In order to distinguish the 7 servants in my group and the 7 servants summoned by the enemy, now use N and O as the distinguishing words. Wu Ming took out a pointer and knocked on the blackboard. New and old, it feels so perfunctory. Someone complained. then use black and red. Hearing someone complaining, Wuming knocked on the blackboard again and changed his mind. Now let's talk about the situation. Wuming coughed and began his speech. According to Stheno, the new 7 servants defeated the black berserker at the beginning, and I defeated the red berserker just now. The berserkers on both sides have already left. Although Hercules had 12 trials in the face of 7 servants, and all of them were not weak, naturally he could not survive. And the black archer? Well, I am familiar with him, so he is an ally. Wuming was still thinking about whether to tell them that he was the master of the archer. After all, Wuming's hands had been wearing gloves. Gadotsi and others did not find the command seal. After thinking about it, Wuming decided not to tell them. In fact, it was just Wuming's bad taste. And I know the black caster. In the current situation, he will definitely choose to help us. Not counting him, I, Black Archer, Red Assassin Stheno and Red Archer Euriley, and Black Lancer Anna and Matthew. We already have 6 servants. Wuming pointed out the advantages of his side. But the enemy's lineup is not weak. Wuming began to point out the weaknesses. First of all, the black saber is the famous King Arthur. I don't know the real name of the rider, but the other side has the existence of the undead core. As soon as Wuming finished speaking, Olga, Marie and the others looked worried. King Arthur? Undead core. Both of these were very troublesome. Then there's the red team. We don't know the red saber's real name. We only know that he's a wretched man. However, to be able to hold the position of saber, he's definitely not a simple person, Wuming said. Everyone nodded. As for Lancer, I think he's the most difficult to deal with right now. According to Stheno's description, Lancer is very likely to be the great hero of India, Karna, Wuming said calmly. Karna. Matthew and Olga Marie were shocked. So that's how it is. No wonder it gave me such a dangerous feeling, Stheno said. If it's the hero who's doing charity, it's indeed very disadvantageous for us, Euriley added. What? Who is Karna? After all, Gadotsi had been an ordinary person before. She didn't know about Hindu mythology, so it was normal that she didn't know about Karna. He's known as the hero who's doing charity. He's a hero in one of the 2 great epics of India, the Mahabharata. He's said to be the son of the sun god Surya, the hero bestowed by the heavens, and the strongest enemy of Arjuna, Olga Marie explained. In the Mahabharata, Karna has a golden armor that's connected to his skin. It was given to him by his father, the sun god Surya, to protect himself. It's basically invulnerable, Wuming explained. But his strongest weapon is the god-killing spear that he gave up the golden armor, Matthew said solemnly. God-killing spear? Indra tricked Karna into giving him the golden armor. Out of guilt, he gave Karna the lightning spear that can kill gods. It's undoubtedly a weapon against gods. At full power, no god can defend against it, Wuming said nostalgically. Wuming had fought Karna before and won. However, there was no doubt that Wuming cheated. He was temporarily given the evil noble phantasm by the suppression force. He locked Karna as evil, and took advantage of the opportunity to hurt Karna, who had lost his golden armor. If Wuming had fought Karna with Sodlek's saber rank, there was no doubt that Wuming would have lost. No matter how much Wuming disguised himself as Sodlek, Sodlek was still a human general after all. The mystery was different, and he was crushed by Karna. Wuming shook his head to stop thinking about it. Especially the servants with divinity. Once Karna releases his noble phantasm, he'll most likely die. Wuming's words hit everyone's heart quite hard. What's more, Karna is a brave warrior. His martial arts have reached the peak. Ordinary servants will soon be defeated if they fight against him. Wuming looked at everyone and said earnestly, "At least you guys have no chance of winning." This sentence made Matthew and Anna lower their heads. That's right. One of them was a demi-servant, and the other was an immature child. It was indeed difficult for them to fight against Karna, who could kill gods. However, Stheno and Euriley didn't feel depressed. "You're talking about us, not you, right?" Euriley smiled. Hearing Euriley's words, Matthew and Anna raised their heads and looked at Wuming. This made Wuming feel helpless. "I once met Karna with a different rank. and I was lucky enough to defeat him. This surprised everyone, especially Gadotsi. That's amazing, Mr. Assassin. But that's when I was in a different rank. If I were to fight Karna with my current assassin rank, I would definitely die. Wu Ming shook his head. But you can change your rank, right? Then change your rank, Olga Marie said casually. The others also looked at Wu Ming in agreement. I also said that there are conditions to change a rank. It just so happens that I don't meet the conditions at the moment. Wu Ming waved his hand helplessly. Then, how can we win this hero over? From the Mahabharata, we can see that he is a righteous man. Olga Marie thought for a moment and said quickly, impossible. Wu Ming directly denied Olga Marie's words. Why? Olga Marie slammed the table unconvinced. I fought with Karna, and in that battle, I learned about Karna's character. Wu Ming poured himself a cup of tea and took a sip. He is a servant who completely obeys the master's words. He completely wants to turn himself into a weapon, even though the servant is the master's weapon, Wu Ming said, a little bored. Ah, then we are definitely going to lose. Gadotsi said, a little depressed. Senpai. Matthew wanted to comfort Gadotsi, but he didn't know what to say. After all, the enemy was too strong, and they couldn't win him over. That's why I brought you here, isn't it? Wu Ming smiled. Huh? Chapter 351. Do you mean that your companion here, the servant, can help us deal with Karna? Olga Marie was indeed one of the 12 monarchs. Although she was still young, her mind worked quickly. Yes, if she's steady, she can be said to be invincible. Wu Ming smiled slightly. Then, assassin, can you tell us her real name? Gadotsi asked curiously. Wait a minute, senpai. It's rude to ask for her real name as soon as we meet, Matthew said nervously. After all, the real name was the secret of every servant. Many times, the weakness of a servant could be known through the real name. Is it that serious? Gadotsi touched her head. After all, Gadotsi didn't understand these rules, so Wu Ming certainly wouldn't be angry. Don't worry, just knowing her real name won't affect her. Wu Ming smiled. The ancient king, the hero king Gilgamesh. That's her name. After Wu Ming said this, Olga Marie, Matthew Stheno, and the others gasped. The hero king, Gilgamesh? Gadotsi asked in confusion. The ancient king who collected almost all the treasures in the world and cut off the connection between gods and humans. That's already the highest level of heroic spirit, Olga Marie said. I didn't expect that person to be attracted by the Holy Grail War. How ironic, Stheno said. Wu Ming knew what Stheno was talking about. The ancient king, who had almost all the treasures in the world and supreme power, was reduced to a servant and participated in the dirty magician ceremony. The Holy Grail War was a dirty ceremony, a war that was triggered by the selfishness of magicians using the weapons called servants. War was dirty. Whether it was in the name of righteousness or something else, the essence of war would never change. This was also why Joan of Arc felt that her hands were dirty. Even if the French army was the righteous side in the war between England and France, and even if Joan of Arc had been holding the holy flag on the battlefield and did not kill anyone, she still participated in the war. Because of her filth, she did not refuse the trial, did not argue for herself, and did not feel that it was unfair. She calmly accepted the burning at the stake. Wu Ming shook his head and stopped thinking about Joan of Arc. In short, the hero king Gilgamesh is definitely on our side. The direction is good. After Wu Ming finished speaking, everyone's heart sank. Although they hadn't seen that king, they were sure that he was very reliable. For now, let's stay here for one night. Let's not talk about Olga Marie. Tachika must be very tired. Gadotsi smiled embarrassedly when he heard himself being mentioned. I'm a little tired. Senpai, take good care of your body, Matthew said with concern. Ha ha ha, I know, Matthew. Gadotsi responded to Matthew and smiled happily. However, Wu Ming always felt that she was full of emotions. Wait a minute, why exclude me? I'm also very tired. Olga Marie said rather angrily. Well, you're my master. How can you be tired so quickly? Be strong. Wu-ming teased Olga Marie. Damn it. Assassin, you bastard. Olga Marie felt that her brain must be abnormal to sign a contract with this guy in front of her. Ha ha ha, Wu-ming laughed and disappeared in spirit form. I'll go out and investigate the situation first. As for food, there are ingredients in the kitchen refrigerator. You can make it yourself. You can also familiarize yourself with this house and choose a room for yourself. Well, that's it. After that, Wu-ming's aura completely disappeared. Then forgive me for being rude, Stheno said and stood up. Huh? Is the goddess going somewhere? Godatsi asked in confusion. Of course, to a room. The goddess needs to rest, Uriali replied and stood up with Stheno. Master needs to rest. With that, Anna picked up the quiet Sakura Madu and followed her two sisters. Thank you. When they passed by Godatsi, Anna's voice came softly. This voice made Godatsi laugh. What? Aren't you being quite frank? After the three Gorgon sisters left, Olga Marie spoke. Seriously, they're all so willful. Olga Marie complained as she sat on the sofa and angrily drank tea. I feel like the director and assassin are very compatible, Godatsi suddenly said as she looked at the complaining Olga Marie. What do you mean? I don't want that guy to be compatible. Seriously. Olga Marie glanced at Godatsi and said calmly. Olga Marie's anger had almost subsided. After all, she got used to being angry. I'll go see what ingredients we have in the fridge. Matthew stood up and bowed to the two before walking to the kitchen. What's wrong with Matthew? Godatsi asked after Matthew left. You noticed it too? Olga Marie crossed her arms and looked in the direction Matthew left. Yeah, Matthew is giving people the feeling that he has something on his mind. Godatsi finished and stood up. I'll go take a look. With that, Godatsi left. Yeah. After all, you're Matthew's master, Olga Marie said calmly as she watched Godatsi leave. Really? When will my servant care about me? Olga Marie couldn't help but think of the only servant who was willing to contract with her. And the only one who could contract with her. In the kitchen, Matthew began to check the appliances after he found the kitchen. The gas furnace is normal. The electricity and drinking water are still there. That's great, Matthew said happily. After all, if the electricity and water were cut off, it would be terrible. Matthew. Suddenly, Godatsi's voice came from behind Matthew. Hey, senpai, why are you here? Matthew turned around and looked at Godatsi who came in. Because I'm a little worried, so I came to see you. Godatsi smiled. Foo. At this moment, an unknown white creature that looked like a squirrel, cat, or dog appeared at the entrance of the kitchen while making a foo sound. It's Foo. Matthew shouted in surprise. Foo, the little guy called Foo called out and jumped onto Matthew's shoulder. Foo's wine glass disappeared when we were running away from Stheno and Uriali. I didn't expect it to find us. Godatsi was surprised. Of course, senpai. Foo is very intelligent. Matthew smiled and stroked Foo while talking to Godatsi. Foo, on the other hand, looked very obedient. If Wu-ming was here, he would be surprised. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.